Welcome back to Major Intonio's presentation of The Ifs of History by Joseph Edgar Chamberlin. Chapter 15, If the Pirate Jean Lafitte Had Joined the British at New Orleans.
After the Battle of New Orleans, on the 8th of January, 1814, General Andrew Jackson, the victorious commander, called before him a certain officer of dashing and Frenchy appearance, and publicly thanked him for the important part which he had borne in the battle. To judge from the signal honor done to this man, the credit for the victory was in no inconsiderable part due to him. And indeed, this was the case. The man to whom the victor's thanks had been thus conspicuously awarded was John Lafitte, the Baratarian pirate. That the success of Jackson in defeating and virtually destroying the army of Pakenham, consisting of the very flower of the Duke of Wellington's soldiery, hinged in an important sense upon this extraordinary corsair and buccaneer, has never been adequately acknowledged in American history. John Lafitte, the foremost of the three pirate brothers of Barataria, was a man of extraordinary influence and popularity among the French and other Latin inhabitants of Louisiana and New Orleans. He was a native of France and a brave and chivalrous corsair, as corsairs go. A price had already been put upon his head by the American governor, Claiborne, but so secure was Lafitte in the affections of the Creole people, whom he served in many ways, that he frequently attended parties and receptions in New Orleans. Arriving, on such occasions, in the full splendor of his outlaw state, and bringing joy to the heart of every lady in the room by his attractive manners as well as by his fame, the pirate chief would practically defy the authorities to lay a hand upon him. If agents of the law were sent to arrest him, he knew of it through 100 spies, long before they reached the place, and withdrew at once to some nearby hiding place which was well known to him. In New Orleans he had 100 safe places of refuge. Under his command was a force of pirates who were many or few, according to the exigencies of the moment, for they could masquerade as peaceful fishermen if necessary, or they could, upon occasion, muster a force of several hundred at a word's notice, always perfectly armed, perfectly drilled, thoroughly redoubtable. Lafitte preyed impartially upon all the commerce of the Gulf of Mexico, and when pursued, ran into one of the numerous mouths of the Mississippi or some inlet of the Gulf into Barataria Lake, into Bayou Lafourche, or into Bayou Teche. There it was vain to follow him, for the intricacies of these passages were known only to his men or to the dwellers along their shores, who were in sympathy with him. When the British descended upon New Orleans in the autumn of 1813, they offered John Lafitte a captain's commission in the British naval service, $30,000 in money, a full pardon for past offenses, and rewards in money and lands for his followers if he would join them in making war on the Americans. He could easily have done so. The French people of Louisiana had no keen loyalty for the Stars and Stripes at that time. As Lafitte went, they might have gone. The British knew this and made their bait a rich one. But Lafitte, although Claiborne's price was on his head and his brother Pierre in prison in New Orleans, refused the offer. Instead, he sent the letters from Captain Lockyer of the British Navy, making this proposition to the Louisiana legislature. Later, after Pierre had escaped, he actually joined General Jackson's nondescript army with a force of riflemen. He seems to have acted from a very honest love for the young American Republic. Jackson, at first, under a misapprehension of the circumstances, had refused to accept the aid of these hellish banditti, as he had called Lafitte's men in a proclamation on his arrival. But when he found that the British were upon him, and that a considerable proportion of his poorly equipped militia were without flints for their muskets, he not only accepted the flints that Lafitte sent him, but gave the pirate an important command on his right wing. There, Jean and his men performed signal service. If Lafitte had joined the British with his men and ships, there is little likelihood that the Americans would have had in this fight the powerful aid of the vessels of war Carolina and Louisiana on the river. Nor is it likely that they would have had the passive support of the French population, nor that they would have found any substitute for the flints with which Lafitte supplied them. And it is very likely that the British assault upon Jackson's entrenchments would have been attended with a different result. Jackson, indeed, might have been crushed very much as Windsor had been crushed at Washington not long before. Such a result at New Orleans would not have affected the outcome of the war, for a peace favorable to the American arms had already been declared at Ghent. But how profoundly a defeat would have influenced the personal and political fortunes of Andrew Jackson and all the events in American history which hung upon his subsequent career. General Jackson won the presidency in 1828 because he was the military hero of the day. His popularity was due to the brilliant victory that he won at New Orleans. After his defeat in 1824, a spectacular visit which he made to the field of the 1814 battle renewed the souvenirs of the great fight and intensified his popularity, and in 1828 he was triumphantly elected. If he had been defeated in battle by Pakenham and New Orleans had been taken, his fame would have been extinguished then and there. And without Jackson, should we ever have had machine politics? It was he who introduced these into our government. He was the inventor and discoverer of the spoils system. To the victors belong the spoils was the maxim of his Lieutenant Marcy and his own principle of action. We have never been able quite to shake off the system which he fastened upon the country. Patronage has been the curse of our politics from that day to this. Then there was his determined and disastrous assault on the United States Bank. Upon this institution, which was founded by Alexander Hamilton, and whose position somewhat resembled the present position of the Bank of England, the financial system of the country depended. Jackson attacked it as a wicked monopoly, as a concrete expression of the money power. He succeeded in wrecking the bank, in bringing on the Panic of 1837, which wrought untold ruin and disaster to the people, and in inaugurating in its place the system of wildcat state banks and currency chaos which lasted up to the Civil War. But Jackson attacked more than the United States Bank and the principle that public office is a public trust. He attacked nullification. Nullification meant that the states could refuse to recognize or obey the laws of the United States. He struck that dictum hard when it made its appearance in South Carolina, and paralyzed it to such an extent that the portion of the nation which did not believe in secession was able to get its preponderant growth and organize its strength and prevent disunion when the test finally came. Jackson saved the Union by stunning the nullification snake until the Republic was big enough and strong enough to trample it underfoot. And that, no doubt, was the greatest event that hung on the contingency of Lafitte's choice of sides at New Orleans.
This concludes today's reading of the Ifs of History by Joseph Edgar Chamberlin. Join us also next Sunday for the subsequent part. Subscribe to Major Intonio's channel. Thank you for listening, and so long.